Bhagavatam emphasizes a lot on just listening, just Shravana. See, if we can do Parayana, if we can read just like we are learning, it's really great. Because Padma Puranam says, Shlokardham Shlokapadam Va. Even if you read just half a shloka or quarter of a shloka per day, then it can give us great benefits, right? But Bhagavatam right from the beginning also focuses on just listening to the katha, right? See, it says one can see Krishna by merely listening to Bhagavatam and nothing else is needed. Muktihi karatale stita sya shravanamatvrena. By merely listening to Bhagavatam, Mukti will be right on our palm, it seems. It will be so easily accessible to us, which means we can see Krishna so easily if we just do this, listening of Srimad Bhagavatam. So we see when Parikshit, the king Parikshit, who is listening to Bhagavatam from Sri Shukacharya, when he implores Sri Shukacharya to tell him Bhagavad Guna, he says what listening to Bhagavad Guna can do to us, can do for us. Parikshit himself says. And that is this beautiful shloka. It comes in the second canto, 8th chapter, the 5th shloka. In that Parikshit Maharaja says, Pravishtaha karnarandhrena swanam bhagasaroruham dhunoti shamalam krishnaha salilasya yatha sharat. He says, Pravishtaha karnarandhrena swanam bhagasaroruham dhunoti shamalam krishnaha salilasya yatha sharat. When we listen to Bhagavad Guna, Bhagavan Krishna, he enters our heart through the whole of the ears, it seems. And he cleans our heart of all its impurities, just like autumn turns the rivers and lakes into clear water. See, after rainy season, we have this autumn, right? The fall. And during rainy season, there is such great downpour that all the lakes and rivers, they're all muddled up completely. It's not very clear. And then when autumn season sets in, again the lakes become very clear. He gives that as an example and he says, like that, our mind is cluttered with so many negative thoughts and negativities and durgunas that we might have accumulated over years, right? So it is dirty within. But when we listen to Bhagavatam, Bhagavan finds his way into our heart. How? Through the whole of the ears. See, this is the beauty. So we have what is called as 5 Jnanendriyas, right? Where is that? There are 11 Indriyas in all. I hope you can see me, see what I'm writing here. We have 11 Indriyas, right? When I say Indriyas, it means sense organs, right? Let us discuss the 11 sometime later. But to start with, of these 11, we have 5 Jnanendriyas, right? And these are called 5 organs of perception. And we know, all of us know what these are, right? The eyes, our ears, nose, tongue, and skin. So technically, we use these to see, to listen, and of course smell. And this is for tasting, this is for tasting, and skin is to feel the touch, right? So these are called the 5 organs of perceptions or Jnanendriyas, right? See, we have to remember that we get input from all these 5 organs of perception. See, remember, I'm going to remind you again of what Ramuji said. In the last session, Ramuji said, that our thoughts shape us. Is it not? Depending on whom we think of, what we think of, we become that. Is it not? That's what he said. Now, remember this. These, thoughts shape us. They make us what we are. But what shapes the thoughts? These the five inputs, that we get from these five organs of perception. Or let me use the Sanskrit term so you get familiar with it. The Jnanendriyas. They're called the Jnanendriyas. Right? You get jnana from that. You get knowledge from these. So it's called Jnanendriya. Now these five inputs, we get constant inputs from all this. We see things, we listen to things, we touch something, we smell something, we taste something. So all these things, they become the input for our thoughts. So they become important in shaping our thoughts. Right? Are you with me? So we first saw that thoughts, what makes us? Now what makes the thoughts? The inputs that we get from these five Jnanendriyas, they shape our thoughts. So it's extremely important that we are very aware and conscious of what we see or hear or taste or touch or smell. Because everything gets registered in our mind and it ends up influencing our thought. Just like we saw how thinking of negative things makes us negative and thinking of positive things makes us positive, how we engage each of our sense organs will decide how we think. Now let's take an example. Say we see the poster of a famous movie star, someone whom we like. Okay? So the moment we see the image of a movie star, we are immediately reminded of that movie star's movies. It doesn't stop there. And then it reminds us of, our favorite movie, maybe a favorite scene, or maybe a favorite song, etc., etc. So just merely seeing the image of a movie star triggers a chain of thoughts. Is it not? By the time we realize where we are, we would have spent almost 15 minutes thinking about a series of things related to that movie star, and we won't even realize it. So seeing something like that, an image like that, with our eyes, that is the input. The input we got about the image of a movie star was through the sense organ called eyes. When that happens, it triggers a lot of thoughts, right? Similarly, this can be true with divine things also. Say we see an image, a photo of our most beloved Sri Madhuri Sakhi Sameta Premika Varada Thakurji, right? When we see this beautiful form of our Guru Maharaj and our Thakurji here, this can also trigger a chain of thoughts, right? So when we see our Thakurji and say, like when we see the flute in his hands, then it would remind us of Venu Geetam, how Bhagwan, Krishna plays his flute. It would remind us of all his leelas, how he charmed all the gopis and gopas, the people of Vrindavan, by his beautiful mellifluous flute, right? And then when we see this beautiful parrot sitting in the hands of Madhuri Sakhi, it could remind us of the beautiful Madhura Geetam of our Guru Maharaj, where he sings, Neevanarkum kileyai nanada vendum taye. In which Guru Maharaj prays, Radhama, I want to be that parrot in your hands. I want to become that parrot. And I want to learn Bhagavan Nama from you. If you ask me to chant Krishna, I will chant not just Krishna, I will also chant Radhe Krishna. I'll add your name to it and chant. Right? Now, this can also trigger the sequence of thoughts. So, what kind of thoughts we have depends on what we see, what we hear, what we touch, etc. They all have their influence on our mind. Right? So, of these five indriyas, now we were talking about how Bhagavatam is emphasizing on listening. Right? And the indriya for listening is ears. Shrotrendriya. Or ears. Shrotrendriya. Right? These are the ears. Now, there is something very unique about the ears. of all the organs of perception, this is very unique. To begin with, the very shape of our ears is very distinct, is it not? See, I don't know how many of us have this, because many of us are not in India. many of us are outside India, and even those of us who are in India, I don't know how many of us have this opportunity to go to temples regularly and get prasadam. See, there's a practice in the temples, at least certainly in India, where the prasadam, that you get in the temple, there'll be some food will be offered to Bhagwan, and it will be distributed as prasada to everyone. And the distribution of this prasada would happen in a small cup-like thing, right? Now, this cup could be made of leaves that are stitched together. It's a very simple cup, very economical, very eco-friendly cup, I should say. Right? It's made of dry leaves and all. They just stitch it together and they make it like a small bowl. And they hand it over to us and we get the prasadam in that. And if you look at the shape of our ears, our Guru Maharaj, would always say, it reminds us of that donnai. Donnai is that vessel made of those leaves, right? So it is like that. Why? Because it's as if Bhagwan has created these ears. As such, they don't have much use for human beings, everything is only internally placed for us. So this is more of like a vestigial organ. That's it. It just directs a bit of sound to us. Otherwise, it's not of much use. But it is still there. And Guru Maharaj, as Swamiji would say, it looks as if it is to show that when you go to satsang, you receive all the prasada through your ears. It is for receiving all the prasada that we have ears like that, right? Another beauty of this organ, this sense organ called ear, is that every other organ of perception can be kind of technically closed if you choose to close. If I choose not to see something, I don't have to blindfold myself. I don't necessarily require something external for me not to see. All I have to do is close my eyes. Bhagwan has given eyelids. You can just close my eyes and we would not see anything. Similarly, if you look at it, if I don't have to smell something, I don't have to close my nose with my fingers or anything. If you just hold your breath, you won't be able to smell anything. So that's also possible. If I don't want to touch something, I don't have to tie my hands. I just can decide not to touch something and I can, not feel anything. And if I don't have to taste something, I don't have to clip my mouth or, cut off my tongue. I should just close my mouth. Naturally, there's a lid to our mouth also. You just shut it and you won't have to taste. But there is no natural lid for our ears. You cannot, independently close your ears, like without using a a muffler or your hands to muffle the sound or something, or some cotton. You need something external. Left to itself, you cannot close your ears at all. And Guru Maharaj would say there is a reason for this. It is by design that Bhagwan has kept our ears like this. Why? Because even if we sit casually in a satsang, even if we happen to cross the hall where someone is telling Bhagavad Katha, someone is doing Bhagavan Nama Sankirtana, someone is chanting, Ramayana or Bhagavata, they're doing Parayana. Even if we casually go along that place, because our ears are constantly open, Bhagavan will enter our heart through the whole of this ears, it seems. That's why it is there. It is like a side entrance of Bhagavan. If we do not let Bhagavan directly into our heart, Bhagavan finds a side entrance to enter. Our Guru Maharaj will give a beautiful example of the story of two friends. There were those two friends, called Rama and Shyam. Ram and Shyam. And they were very close friends. And one day it so happened that our Ram was in his house. He had locked himself inside his room completely. And he had just one window open for some ventilation. He was on the top floor of his building. And he went to sleep. Now our Ram was diabetic. He had sugar. And sometimes, if he ignores his medicines, it could become low sugar. And one day when he was sleeping, suddenly his sugar went down, and he had a sudden attack of low sugar. And because he was sleeping, he did not even know that, and he was unconscious. And it could be very dangerous if one remains in that state for long. And his friend Shyam came knocking at his door. He tried to, ring the bell. But since our Ram was completely unconscious, he did not know that Shyam was trying to reach him. And Shyam tried his best to somehow bang the door, shout Ram's name, ring the bell. He did everything. But since he didn't get any response, he was a bit worried. So you know what he did? He looked around and he saw there was a pipeline that was leading to the window, and he climbed the pipeline. He saw the window was open, and he jumped into the room of Ram, saw him unconscious, and he understood what was happening, and he saved him, it seems. Swamiji would say this, and he would say that's exactly how, that is the story of us and Bhagwan. Bhagwan is our friend. He is our Atma Bandhu. He is our closest friend. Nobody can be as close as Bhagwan is for us, and no one can do hitam. Hitam means, good. No one can do anything that's as good as Bhagwan can do for us. No one can care so much as Bhagwan cares for us. No one can love as much as Bhagwan loves us. That's the beauty. But we are not very conscious of that, because we haven't seen Bhagwan directly yet, is it not? We see our mother, we see our father, we see our friends. They're all tangible relationships. And because they are tangible, because we talk to them day in and day out, because we see that they love us, we have seen the instances of their caring for us, their expression of love in the form of gifts and all that, we kind of understand their love. We are aware of their love. We are conscious of their love. Even then, in that case also, we forget sometimes, and we blame our parents, or we blame our friends for things, even if they miss one or two things. But in the case of Bhagwan, since we don't have a direct experience of Bhagwan yet, we do not understand how much he actually loves us, how much he actually cares for us. We don't recognize the gifts that he has given. Unless and until we come to satsang, we come under the grace net of Guru, and we are made to understand the greatest gifts that Bhagwan has given us. We don't recognize it on our own. So we are like that Ram, who's unconscious, who does not realize that we have a great friend like Shyam, and we don't know what is good for us, and we are lying unconscious, oblivious to our own good. And when we are refusing to open the main door, like this friend Shyam, who climbs onto the pipeline and enters through the window, Bhagavan finds his way into our heart through our ears. That's what Parikshit Maharaja says here. Pravishtaha karna randhrena. Karna means ears, randhra means hole. Pravishtaha, he enters through the hole of our ears. And what does he do? Dhunoti shamalam krishnaha. Bhagavan completely washes our mind, and there is no dirt left when Bhagavan sits in our heart like that, it seems. That's why Bhagavatam says, all you have to do is just come and sit in a katha. Even if you're tired, it's okay. Just come and sit there. In a very lighter way, our Guru Maharaj would say, even if you come to the katha and sleep off, you doze off, it's okay. Because even if we sleep off, our ears cannot be closed, is it not? So Bhagavan will enter our heart through that open ears anyway, it seems. So it is good to come like that. And even listening to Bhagavata Katha very casually can lead us, can guide us, can take us to the highest experience, to the highest joy and peace. It can take us to have a darshan of Krishna himself. And that is seen in a very beautiful story of a great Bhagavata, which we'll quickly discuss today. This Bhagavata's name was Raskan, right? Let me write it for you so you remember. His name was Raskhan. He belonged to the Sri Vallabha Sampradaya. We all, I don't know how many of us know Sri Vallabhacharya. He was a contemporary of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. All of us know Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, certainly. And, they were contemporaries. They lived in the same time. And Vallabhacharya, he established this most beautiful path to attain Bhagavan, to celebrate and worship Bhagavan, called the Pushti Marga. Right? It was called the Pushti Marga. And he had many disciples. Many of great sadhus were his disciples. And they were totally 8 of them who were mainly called as the Ashtadasas in Vallabha Sampradaya. They were the Ashtadasas. And of these, 4 of them were direct disciples of Sri Vallabhacharya, and 4 of them were the disciples of Sri Vittalanatha, who was also the son of Sri Vallabhacharya. Right? So, our Raskhan was actually a disciple of Sri Vittalanatha. The story is a very amazing one. Raskhan was actually a businessman. He was a jeweler, and he did not belong to our Sanatana Dharma. He was not born in Sanatana Dharma. He was born in a different faith. But he was a great businessman, and he had a great acumen for a business. He was a jeweler. He used to collect a lot of rare gems, and he used to sell it to rich people, and he was very good at it. And he had some niche customers, and he would always, he had particular clients, and he would always go and sell whatever rare gems he would have his hand on to such great rich clients. That's what he used to do. One day, Raskhan got a very rare kind of diamond, a big piece of it, and he was very thrilled. See, being a jeweler, being a businessman, obviously he was not thrilled about, using it for himself, but he was thrilled that he could do great business with it. He immediately could remember a few of his very rich clients who would be very, very eager to buy this. So he thought, let me start my business today with this gem. It's going to be really great. And he went in, he had a list of clients, right? So he thought he had prioritized a few clients. He knew that some of them were good enough and, they would certainly buy. So he went to one such client. He went to their house. He took this gem with him. He had this beautiful treasure box in which he had a lot of invaluable gems. And he added this rarest of rare diamond to it. And he took it to the client's house. He knocked on the door of the client. The wife of the client opened the door. And he asked, is the man in? And the wife said, no, he has gone to the temple. There is some function going on there. He will not be back for another 4 hours. And Raskhan thought, okay, he's not lucky today. So he went to the second client in his list. He went to his house. He knocked the door. And again, the wife of that client came out. And she said, oh, sorry, he's not in. Raskhan asked, where is he? He said, oh, he has gone to this temple. There's some function. He won't be back for another 4 or 5 hours. And Raskhan thought, wow, what is so important that's happening in the temple that all these people are there? He thought, let me try 2 or 3 more and then figure out what it is. So he went to 2 or 3 more clients' house. The same story everywhere. Everyone is out to the same temple, attending the same function. See, a very smart businessman that our Raskhan was, he thought, okay, great. Now that all our clients seem to be in the same place in temple, I think it's best for me to go to the temple. Whatever the function is, it's okay. I'll just go to the temple, see where these clients are, and I will do my business right there. Great, I have all of them there. I can have a good bargain. So he went to the temple. He saw there was a big Shamayana there, and big canopy was there. Thousands of people were sitting, and in spite of that big crowd, he was looking around. He didn't know what was happening. Right? He did not bother to see what was actually happening. He just was searching for his clients, and he saw his first client. The moment he saw his first client, he just pushed through the crowd. And while people were telling, hey, sit down, he just didn't bother. He walked his way through all the sitting devotees, and he found his client and made way. He pushed his way into that space, and he sat beside that client, and he said, hello, sir, see what I have for you. And, that devotee, that first client, he was very surprised. He didn't expect to see this businessman here. He said, Raskan, what are you doing here? And Raskan opened the treasure box, and he revealed that brightest of bright, rarest of rare diamond. And he said, I have this. Do you want to buy it? He said, wait, just close it. Keep it with you. Let this be over. And Raskan looked around to see what was happening. Then he saw right in front of him, like the thousands of devotees were sitting, but there was a podium, and on that stage, a Mahatma was sitting, and he was telling some story. And Raskan did not even give ears to it. He was not listening to it. He looked around. He saw, okay, this client was busy listening to the story. He thought, okay, he's going to be busy. Let me look for someone else. He turned around. He saw another person. He slowly moved to that other client. He sat there. He nudged him. And he said, see what I have. Do you want to buy this? And he also said, hey, please wait. Let this katha be over. And then I'll see. Then finally, Raskan realized that nobody was going to look at his rarest of rare gem. He was pretty intrigued to see what was happening here that was more important than even this rarest of rare gem. So he thought, now that anyway I am here and I am seeing all of these people here, let me wait for the katha to be over, and then let me find these people and ask them do the business here right away. So he decided to wait there in the katha. And while he was waiting, he thought, now that I'm anyway waiting, let me see what is happening. And he gave his ears to that katha. And on the stage was this great Mahatma, Sri Vittalanatha Swami, and he was telling Srimad Bhagavatam. And on that day, he was describing Venu Geetam from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Right? And in Venu Geetam, in the very beginning, we have a beautiful description of Bhagavan playing the Venu, playing the flute, and how Bhagavan stands, Varha Peedam Natavara Vapuho Karnayo Karnikaram Vipradvasaha Kanaka Kapisham Vaijayantin Chamala Randra Denoradhara Sudhaya Puraya Gopa Vrindai Vrindaranyam Swapadaramanam Ravishad Gita Kirti Varha Peedam Natavara Vapuho. This is a beautiful shloka which describes Krishna playing flute. Bhagavan is standing under this Vata Vriksha, under a banyan tree, and Bhagavan has his legs crossed. He has three twists on his body, his Tribhangi Lalitakara, and one is at his neck because he is slanting his head towards his left side. He is holding his flute on the right side, and his hip is also bent towards the right side, and and there is this cross leg that Bhagavan has. So he is Tribhangi, and Bhagavan with his beautiful eyes, lotus-like eyes, Bhagavan has this Karnikara Pushpa, this beautiful yellow flowers adorning his ears, and his Pitambara which is shining, and Bhagavan is like that Navamegha Shyama playing this flute, and he has a very light and bright peacock feather on the top of his head that's dancing to the song that his flute is playing, and our Vittalanatha Swami is describing the beauty of this Neela Bala. He says in Vrindavan, on the banks of Yamuna, under this Vata Vriksha, Krishna stands, the beautiful boy who is blue-hued, the dark blue-hued, cloud-hued, dark cloud-hued person that he is. He's called Neela Balan because of the color of his skin. So he called Neela Bala is playing the flute there. And when Vittalanatha Swami was describing the beauty of Krishna like this Raskan, who happened to hear this description, he had no clue about Bhagavatam. He had no clue about who Krishna was. He just heard the description of Krishna playing the flute. And completely unmindful of the thousands of devotees who were sitting there, Raskan just walked straight to the stage to Vithalanatha and he said, Swami, this beautiful boy that you're describing, where does he live, Swami? Where does he live? Can I see him? Raskan did not even realize that Vithalanatha Swami was talking about Krishna from Dwapara Yuga, from a different Yuga, who lived in a different time. For Raskan, he thought that this boy was living somewhere here and he could see him. And Vithalanatha, when he saw that Raskan was intent on seeing this boy, he said, of course you can see him. If you go to Vrindavan, you can see him. The moment Raskan heard about this, believe it or not, remember, he came here for doing some business. Remember, he had a treasure box with him, full of rarest of rare gems in his hands. He completely forgot about everything. He had no memory of those treasure box or of those gems. He had no memory of the clients. He had no memory of the business that he was up to here. He was completely absorbed in the beauty of the Krishna, the beauty of the Neela Bala, and instantly he dropped everything. He did not even remember where he kept the treasure box. He just ran towards Vrindavan. He reached Vrindavan. He knocked the door of every house and he asked, does Neela Bala live here? Neela Bala kva vartate. He knocks the door, he says, does Neela Bala live here? In Vrindavan, every other child would be called Kishora, Nandabala, Neela Bala, and all that. Is it not? So they said, Neela Bala? Oh, that boy there. No, he's playing there, he's Neela Bala. He said, no, not that Neela Bala. I'm talking about the Neela Bala who has a flute in his hand, who has a peacock feather on his crown, who has a pitambara, who stands cross-legged. And immediately the devotees understood that this person is having a gush of love for that divine Krishna, and he does not even realize, he does not even know that he is in love with that Krishna. So they guide him. They say, up on top of that Govardhana hill, there is a temple of Govinda, Srinathji. That is where Krishna lives. That is where you can find this Neela Bala. And Raskan ran there, but since he had not had his bath for so many days because he came running from Delhi to Vrindavan, and that moment he heard about Krishna, he had come there and he was searching for this Neela Bala everywhere in Vrindavan. Finally, when he reached Govardhana, 2-3 days had passed. He had not had his bath. He was not looking very clean. So the temple authorities refused to let him inside. They thought he was a madman. He kept asking for the boy who was Neela Bala. They didn't realize the state in which he was in, so they refused entry. But Raskan did not give up. He stood outside the temple. He was waiting because he heard Vithalanatha Swami tell in the story that boy comes out to graze the cows, to play with his friends, the Gopas. So he thought, I will see him when he comes out. But he didn't see him at all. And he cried, he wept. He was so anxious to see that Neela Bala, that most beautiful, shining blue child, that he felt so bad he could not see him. He did not eat, he did not sleep. He kept asking every passerby if they have seen that Neela Bala, if he would ever come out. He spent 1 week, 7 days without food, without water, without sleep, waiting there to see this Neela Bala. And Vithalanatha Goswami returned from Delhi after his pravachan was over there. Then he came back to the temple. The temple authorities warned him. They told him there is this madman who's standing outside and it looks like he would run into this temple anytime. And Vithalanatha Swami wanted to see who this madman was. When he came out, Raskan, like he did with everyone else, he ran and he fell at the feet of Vithalanatha Goswami and he begged him, he fell at his feet, he said, please tell me where that Neela Balan is. I want to see that boy. When Vithalanatha Goswami saw this, he is a Mahatma, is it not? So he understood, he understood this is the same person who came to the Katha, and by listening to just the Barhapitam Shloka, he fell in love with Bhagwan. So he thought he is the most eligible person to see Krishna, and Vithalanatha Goswami caught hold of the hand of Raskan. He took him inside the temple and he asked the priest of the temple to open the curtain of Srinath. And the moment he opened the curtain of Srinath, Raskan did not see the image of Srinath there, but he actually saw Krishna in that form in which he was, Raskan was desiring to see Krishna as Neelabala. Bhagavan gave that most wonderful, divine, splendorous darshan to Raskan, and from that day, he became a great devotee of Krishna. He became the park of this Ashtadasas, and he was employed in the service of Srinath Ji all through his life. That is the beauty of listening to Bhagavad Katha. Since Bhagavatam focuses so much on just listening to Bhagavad Katha, it says don't even have to come and listen. The moment you desire to listen to Bhagavad Katha, the moment you desire to listen to Bhagavata Katha itself, Bhagavan will enter your heart and clear it and purify it. That's the beauty of Bhagavatam.